Trump's pressure campaign against his Vice President Mike Pence. That is the theme from the third January 6th hearing, which took place on Thursday, June 16th. Trump wanted Pence to ignore the rules and throw out the votes for Joe Biden as president-elect, or to recess the joint session of Congress for 10 days and send the electoral slates back to the states. That would allow pro-Trump state legislators to ignore the will of the voters and submit electoral votes for Trump instead. This hearing had two witnesses, Pence's former White House counsel, Greg Jacob, and retired Judge Michael Luttig. Both men were part of a team that pushed back against Trump's pressure campaign. Judge Luttig is a huge conservative. He was a possible candidate for the Supreme Court instead of Justice Samuel Alito. So keep that in mind as I tell you some of the most important parts of this third hearing. If you want to know what's been happening in all the January 6 hearings, or you want to understand more about U.S. politics without feeling absolutely overwhelmed, subscribe to my channel and turn on the bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. Hola, let's get back to this. The plan I told you about, the plan to throw away the electoral votes or send them back to the states so the state legislatures could give new electoral votes to Trump, was a plan crafted by a lawyer named John Eastman. This plan was illegal, and even Eastman said it was illegal. Eastman and others told Trump the plan was illegal, but that didn't matter. Trump embraced the plan, an illegal and unconstitutional theory that one person, the vice president, could overrule the will of the people and choose the president himself.
What most surprised me about that meeting was that when Mr. Eastman came in, he said, "I'm here to request that you reject the electors." He came in and expressly requested that.
And as Trump and Pence were privately sparring about the vice president's role, Trump issued a statement saying he and the vice president were in total agreement that Pence had the power to act.
We were shocked and disappointed because whoever had written and put that statement out, it was categorically untrue.
On December 13th, 2020, the day before the Electoral College was going to meet to certify the electoral votes, a lawyer by the name of Kenneth Chesebro wrote to Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani arguing that Pence could refuse to count the votes from states that had alternative electors. There was already a scheme underway to create second slates of electors. Now, that lawyer, John Eastman, said that there were 7 states that had submitted dual slates of electors: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, New Mexico, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Judge Luttig reiterated that these fake electors had no legal authority whatsoever. And also, there is no historical or legal precedent at all to support the idea that the vice president could count alternative electoral slates instead of those certified by the states. This is absolutely nuts. And it's not just me saying this. Mike Pence's counsel, the guy testifying that day, Greg Jacobs, Mike Pence's chief of staff, Mark Short, and according to the testimony we heard during this hearing, Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, Trump lawyer, Eric Herschmann, and Trump advisor, Jason Miller, all thought that Eastman was crazy. Since December, Trump began pressuring Pence to go along with the plan. Pence refused. Trump kept going. In meetings on January 4th and 5th of 2021, Trump kept demanding that Pence overturn the election. When Pence continued to refuse, Trump sent out a tweet on January 5th saying that he and Pence were in total agreement that Pence could act to change the outcome of the election. At this point, Pence's chief of staff, Mark Short, was so worried about what Trump might do on January 6th that he told the Secret Service he was concerned about Mike Pence's safety. On January 6, 2021, Trump called Pence on the phone and, according to witnesses, forgive me for the language I'm about to use, called him a wimp and a pussy. The committee showed writers claiming they were there because Pence had let them down. Pence betrayed us. The president mentioned it like 5 times when he talked, one person said. At 2:24 p.m., the president tweeted this. A White House press member said that this tweet was like pouring gasoline on the fire. 2 minutes later, at 2:26, Pence and his family were evacuated to a secure location where he would stay for more than 4 hours.
Make no mistake about the fact that the vice president's life was in danger. A recent court filing by the Department of Justice explains that a confidential informant from the Proud Boys told the FBI that the Proud Boys would have killed Mike Pence if given a chance. This witness, whom the FBI affidavit refers to as W1, stated that other members of the group talked about things they did that day, and they said that anyone they got their hands on, they would have killed, including Nancy Pelosi. W1 further stated that members of the Proud Boys said that they would have killed Mike Pence if given a chance. We understand that congressional leaders and others were evacuated from the Capitol complex during the attack. We'd like to show you what happened after the Vice President was evacuated from the Senate. The Select Committee has obtained never-before-seen photos from the National Archives that show Vice President Pence sheltering in a secure underground location as rioters overwhelmed the Capitol. At 4:19 p.m., Vice President Pence is seen looking at a tweet the President had just sent, a tweet asking the rioters to leave the Capitol. After 4.5 hours spent on working to restore order, the Vice President returned to the Senate floor to continue the certification of electors. While the Vice President made several calls to check on the safety of others, it was his own life that was in great danger. Mr. Jacob, did Donald Trump ever call the Vice President to check on his safety?
He did not.
Now, can you believe that John Eastman still wrote to Pence's team and asked them that the Vice President send the electoral slates back to the states?
I implore you one last time, can the Vice President please do what we've been asking him to do these last 2 days? Suspend the joint session, send it back to the states.
And we'll show you the text of that email, which Dr. Eastman wrote at 11:44 p.m. on January 6th. So after the attack on the Capitol and after law enforcement had secured the Capitol, he still wrote, as you described, quote, "So now that the precedent has been set that the Electoral Count Act is not quite so sacrosanct as was previously claimed, I implore you to consider one more relatively minor violation and adjourn for 10 days to allow the legislatures to finish their investigations." So even after the attack on the Capitol had been quelled, Dr. Eastman requested, in writing no less, that the Vice President violate the law by delaying the certification and sending the question back to the states. Is that correct, Mr. Jacob?
It is.
The next day, Eastman called Trump lawyer Eric Herschmann.
The day after, Eastman, I don't remember why he called me, or he texted me or called me, wanted to talk with me, and he said he couldn't reach others. And he started to ask me about something dealing with Georgia and preserving something potentially for appeal. And I said to him, "Are you out of your effing mind?" Right? I said, I only want to hear 2 words coming out of your mouth from now on. Orderly transition. And I screamed, I said, I don't want to hear any other effing words coming out of your mouth, no matter what, other than orderly transition. Repeat those words to me. And I screamed, eventually he said, orderly transition. I said, good, John. Now I'm going to give you the best free legal advice you're ever getting in your life. Get a great effing criminal defense lawyer. You're going to need it. And then I hung up on him.
In fact, just a few days later, Dr. Eastman emailed Rudy Giuliani and requested that he be included on a list of potential recipients of a presidential pardon.
Eastman didn't get a pardon, so he took the Fifth Amendment before the January 6th committee, asserting his right against self-incrimination more than 100 times. As you can see, Pence was working on governing even while his life was in danger and had to be taken to a secure location, while Trump was working to destroy our democracy. Now, I think it's important to note that Pence and his team did what they were supposed to do that day, but they could have warned many people, including the authorities, about some of these plans. Pence knew that if he did what Trump wanted him to do, he would have been the one to pay for this because it was an illegal scheme. Now, the other witness in this hearing, Judge Luttig, as I told you, is a very respected conservative lawyer. I also want to note that both John Eastman, the mastermind behind the electoral vote scheme, and Texas Senator Ted Cruz clerked for him. Judge Luttig was very serious. He warned that Trump's scheme was an attempt to overturn the rule of law and destroy our democracy, and that the danger is not over. Trump and his supporters remain a clear and present danger to American democracy. Watch this clip of Judge Luttig speaking. This man thinks about every single word that comes out of his mouth and the impact it has. He speaks very slowly and methodically.
Almost 2 years after that fateful day in January 2021, that still Donald Trump and his allies and supporters are a clear and present danger to American democracy. That's not because of what happened on January 6th. It's because to this very day, the former president, his allies and supporters pledge that in the presidential election of 2024, if the former president or his anointed successor as the Republican Party presidential candidate were to lose that election, that they would attempt to overturn that 2024 election in the same way that they attempted to overturn the 2020 election, but succeed in 2024 where they failed in 2020. I don't speak those words lightly. I would have never spoken those words ever in my life, except that that's what the former president and his allies are telling us.
So far, we've covered the initial hearing, which you can watch right here, and the second hearing, which focused on the fact that Trump knew he lost the election and not only lied about it, but lied to raise millions of dollars from his supporters. In my next summary, I'm going to tell you about the fourth hearing, which focused on the scheme to pressure swing state electors to switch their votes to Trump. And when that failed, the plan was to create a false slate of electors to submit to Congress and to the National Archives to set up an argument that there was confusion about who had won the election. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel to get all of the summaries about the January 6th hearings and other videos covering important issues related to U.S. politics. Nos vemos pronto. Un abrazo.